This week, Mississippi GOP Chairman Mike Hurst talks candidly with 12 News about the presidential campaign, the jostling among potential rivals for the governor's office, and 12 News talks one-on-one with Jackson Police Chief Joseph Wade about his strategies for crime fighting in the capital city. That's all ahead this Sunday on Mississippi Insight. 65 days, that's how long we have until voting begins in the 2024 presidential election. Mississippi is a deep red state politically. We're widely expected to give electoral points to Republican former President Donald Trump. But in the race for a resurgence Democratic ticket with Vice President Kamala Harris, the GOP doesn't want to take anything for granted. I spoke earlier with Mississippi Republican Party Chairman Mike Hurst. He's the former U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of Mississippi. We are just 2 months away from the general election, and how do you guys see the mood of the GOP here in Mississippi?
The mood of the GOP is strong, Byron. I mean, folks are fired up. I've never personally seen this much excitement for a presidential campaign. Just got back from the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee back in July, and it's the most energized convention I've ever been to. So I think folks in Mississippi are real fired up to re-elect Donald Trump president. Now,
this is a much different campaign than it was going to be between Biden and Trump. Now you have the Harris-Walz campaign. Kind of assess how that matchup is going to be and what's different here.
I don't think much has changed, really. I think now we have someone who is still running on the same results, the same policies, and the same outcome that Biden was running on. I mean, remember, this is Vice President Kamala Harris. This is a Harris-Biden election. So as far as outcomes, results, policies, I don't think there's any difference.
Is it going to be a tougher race since the polls are showing that Harris is leading in about 4 of the 7 battleground states? How do you see Trump competing in those areas?
I think he's going to compete fine. Obviously, you have seen a shift since Biden got out and Harris got in, but a lot of that would just be to, I would say, a bump in, you know, the honeymoon period, if you will. You had that shift when Biden got out and Harris got in, and then you had the shift when Harris and the DNC had their national convention. I think over the next 67 days, you're going to see that come down and you're going to see Trump retake the lead in the polls.
There was a lot of talk that President Biden needs to stop the personal attack and just focus on the policies. Your thoughts on that? Does he need to just focus on the policies, or does it really matter?
I would agree with you. President Biden needs to stop the personal attacks. So
yeah,
I know you are.
Excuse me, I'm President Trump.
I think what the focus should be on both sides, Democrat or Republican, are policies and results. If we compare where we stand today in 2024 with when President Trump was in office, I don't think any American can say their lives are better today than it was when President Trump was president.
How do you see the turnout for this election this coming year? Is there going to be a large turnout, an average turnout? What do you see happening?
I do see a large turnout. I think people are more plugged in than they ever have been. I think people are more fired up on both sides than they ever have been. And I think because of the way the economy is right now, because of the unsecured border, because all the things that have transpired over the last 3.5 years, I think both sides are going to be fired up to go to the polls.
How enthusiastic do you think the voters are here in Mississippi, both on Republicans and Democrats? Is there an enthusiasm gap, or do you think everybody's enthusiastic about this campaign?
I think, frankly, the Republicans are more enthusiastic, and I'll tell you why. Over the last 3.5 years, the average American family has paid more than $20,000 extra because of inflation. The average home has cost more than 50% over the last 3.5 years. We have seen over the last few weeks illegal aliens come into our state and commit violence, and I think that has really gotten, especially the Republican voters, fired up.
And so you'll think that in Mississippi, you think voters will turn out in large numbers here in the state of Mississippi?
I do. I really do.
What do you see happening? What's the message that Donald Trump's going to have here, particularly in the Sun Belt states, to make sure that people turn out?
I think, again, the message should be, are you better off today than you were when President Trump was in office? And I think if you compare the results of the last 3.5 years and how all of the prices, everything that we've seen from the grocery store to the gas station, our safety, everything that you see this administration has done, I think it was done better when President Trump was in office.
How critical will the debate be on September 10th to this race here? Is it going to be a breaking point for either candidate?
I think it's going to be critical, again, if we focus on the outcomes, the results, and the policy. If we compare Democratic policies and Democratic results over the last 3.5 years to those when President Trump was in the White House, I think it's going to be critical for this election.
What does Donald Trump have to do in this debate to set him apart?
I think he has to continue to pound what he stands for, pound what policies he's going to implement when he gets back in the White House, and show the American public how his policies are going to change their lives for the better.
You have been the state chairman since May, but you've only been a long-time political observer. Talk about how the presidential campaigns have evolved over the years. What have you seen different, and what's different today in your perspective than it has been in the past?
I think over the most recent decade, I would say, social media and the tech companies have really transformed our lives as American citizens. I mean, the ability for presidential candidates to have direct access to the people, to bypass traditional media, to speak directly to people, I think that's a huge, huge difference than what you've seen in the past.
Is that a good thing, the way things have been going? Or
I think it is a good thing. I think it allows those who are running for president to be able to talk directly to the voters, and I think that's good for America.
We have here in the state, we have a Senate race in the state here. Senator Roger Wicker is facing Democrat Ty Pinkins. How serious of a challenger is Pinkins to U.S. Senator Wicker?
I think Senator Wicker has done very well by our state, and I think he's going to do very well in November in the election.
Ty Pinkins has been asking Senator Wicker for debates. Do you think there should be a debate, or will there be a debate?
I don't know. I haven't spoken to Senator Wicker or his campaign about that, so I don't know whether there will be a debate.
Would you like to see a debate?
I think anybody would like to see a debate, but again, I think right now, if both sides lay out their vision for Mississippi, I think that's good enough for Mississippians.
Mississippi won't have another gubernatorial election until the 2027, but potential candidates are kind of testing the waters. Any thoughts on the process for the gubernatorial race coming up in a couple of years?
No thoughts.
No thoughts.
I think it's a little early to talk about gubernatorial elections in 2027, and I'll just let those who want to run for the governor, I'll let them do the talking.
We should ask you comments about one of those possible gubernatorial candidates. State Auditor Shad White has a new book out. It mentions your role in Mississippi's TANF fraud scandal. White contends that you as U.S. attorney at that time were uncooperative and hostile. You've called his book a work of fiction. What else do you want to tell viewers about the spat you have between White?
I don't think it's a spat. I think Auditor White has put out a book that has incorrect facts. Mm-hmm. I mean, and I have called them lies, and I will continue to call them lies. I'm not going to talk about this issue, but I am going to set the record straight. And the record was we were not contacted in the U.S. Attorney's Office by the state auditor, and we weren't brought in until after the indictments were sent down by Hinds County District Attorney's Office.
If he were the nominee for governor, would you support him?
I would support the Republican gubernatorial nominee. I would.
How do you see the Republican Party in Mississippi today? What's the strength of the Republican Party, and is there room to grow? Absolutely. I think we are growing. I think the strengths are we speak to Mississippians' values. We are for free speech. We're for Second Amendment rights. We're for liberty. We're for getting the government out of the way and letting Mississippians live their lives. And I think that speaks to Mississippians of all ages, all races. How do you want to grow the party? Because it seems like right now on the national level, there's more of a gender divide now between in the two parties. How would you like to grow the party? Yeah, and I don't see that on the state level in Mississippi. What we are focusing on is more minority outreach. We have seen President Trump increase his reach of the minority community exponentially. We want to see more women getting into politics, running for office. You may know my wife ran for office last year as a state House of Representative member. We want to see more of that for my 5 daughters. We want to see more young people. I think young people are desperate for this type of leadership, and I think when they hear the values that the Republican Party holds, I think they'll come over and join us. If Trump wins the presidency, what policies would you want him to focus on in the first year? I think first year and first day in office, he has to try to get our economy back on track. For the last 3.5 years, as I mentioned, inflation has been out of control. We've got to get the economy back on track so Mississippians and Americans can live their lives better. And when you talk about the economy, what are we talking about? Are we talking about grocery prices? Well, how much time you got, you know? I mean, there's a lot of things we can do. I don't want to get into the details of the economic policies right now, but I can tell you less government equals more freedom. And I think if we get the government out of the way, we Mississippians, we Americans can live our lives better. Mike Hurst, always a pleasure. Yeah, thanks, Byron. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, and we'll be right back. The Jackson Police Department transparency and community outreach are key to its crime-fighting strategy. The man behind that approach is Police Chief Joseph Wade. 12 News' Jaylon Anderson got a chance to speak with the chief about his efforts to make Jackson a safer place.
I've often stated that we're not going to arrest our way out of these issues and problems that we have in our community. I would like to see more funding for our homeless population, more funding for our people that are addicted to drugs in our community, and also the people that suffer from mental illness in our community. Those things would help me out tremendously to improve the quality of life for our citizens here in the city of Jackson. And I'm not for arresting away the problem. I'm about giving people the resources and making the resources available to them to be successful. Because a lot of times, Jaylon, people that are homeless don't choose to be homeless. I know there's a narrative out there where they choose to be. No, life can punch you in the stomach and you can be homeless, one day, or myself. So we want to make sure that we give them the resources to get them back on their feet. And that's something that I would like to see funding on a state level, federal level, and a city level, and county level for people who suffer from mental illness, people who are homeless, and people that are suffering from drug addiction in our community. And we've done a yeoman's job at the Jackson Police Department since I've been on the department, which goes back to 1995, of pushing crime. We don't want it over here, so we're going to push it into these other neighborhoods. That is so unfair to the people who live in those communities. They deserve the same quality of life. They deserve the same law enforcement patrolling that area, putting the emphasis on what's happening in their community. So I'm not for pushing crime. Hey, you can do crime over there, but not in my neighborhood. First of all, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. It pushes a false narrative. It pushes confirmation bias into our community, and that's something that I'm not interested in. I think every single person, whether they stay in North Jackson, South Jackson, West, or downtown, deserve the same police services. They deserve the same government as other people in other parts of this city. But that's why I continue to push collaborative efforts. Collaborative efforts. We've got to share information, we've got to communicate, but I'm not for pushing crime. I'm for eradicating crime in the city of Jackson. And as we know, the criminal justice system is cops, courts, and corrections. Cops, courts, and corrections. So one of the things that I did to start, I met with our municipal court judges. I went over and met with the county judges, and I talked about, and I understand that bail and bond is not designed to be punitive, but we've got to send a message out. We've got to send a message out. When you go to these other communities and you commit a crime, you hear these things, $1 million bond or no bond. But you may hear the same offense that happens or transpires here in the city of Jackson, where there's a $20,000 bond or a $10,000 bond. Your life and your property means just as much in the city of Jackson as it does in Madison, Rankin, Warren, or other parts of Hinds County. So I worked with building those relationships with the judges. They will call me. We will have conversations about how JPD can prepare cases better and do a better job, so when the case comes before them, then it won't be a reason for them to have that low bond. The case will be efficient and it will be proper to move forward to the next stage in the criminal justice system. But also, to answer your question, which there is no just a single answer, we have built a great relationship with the district attorney's office, the Mississippi Attorney General's office, and the U.S. Attorney's office. We communicate with them on a weekly basis. They're doing a lot of great work here in the city of Jackson, and we have to have those relationships with them as we move forward, because we've got to get prosecutions. We've got to get prosecutions. It's one thing to make an arrest, but you want to give that person an opportunity to get reformed, because apparently being in the streets of Jackson is not giving them what they need to get their life on track. But we can't allow them to continue to pillage and plague our community with violence. So let's get them out of the system. Hopefully they can be reformed. But if not, then at least they're not out here robbing, carjacking, and shooting into someone's home.
And you always call your constituents your sheroes and your heroes.
Yes.
What's the ideal number of police officers we need in the city of Jackson, and what do you say about keeping them in the city of Jackson?
That is so important. That has been my number one agenda item, my number one priority, and that's rebuilding the ranks of the Jackson Police Department. When I took the helm, and I've said this many times, we were at 221 police officers. We had not had a net gain in years. Now we're at a net gain of 42. Right now today we're at 263 Jackson police officers. And you're right, they are my heroes and sheroes because they put their life on the line every single day so we can have a better quality of life. But we are actively recruiting the next generation of the Jackson Police Department. We have a great work relationship with the Jackson State University, Alcorn State University, and Hines Community College to recruit the talent in their criminal justice programs. But we are also recruiting institutional knowledge from these other law enforcement agencies. We lost a lot of institutional knowledge, but now that institutional knowledge has come back to the Jackson Police Department. And there's several things I have to do to keep them here. First of all, I have to let them know that they are appreciated. I commend them and I honor them for the sacrifices that they make every single day. But also, we have to be honest, we have to pay them. And I say this to my team all the time, we're gonna praise our officers for the work that they do, and we gotta pay them competitively for the work that they do. My first year, we got them a $3,000 raise. A $3,000 raise across the board for every Jackson police officer. Now I'm soliciting the administration, the council to give them an additional $2,000 raise, which would mean over a year's time, I guess 13 months, they would have received a $5,000 raise. That puts us in the ball game. We're no longer below these other agencies. You know, we're extending the gap between our salary and capital, and that's going to help us to retain our police officers, but also praise them and give them the tools they need to do their jobs. Well, we have experienced a lot of issues with the youth in our community. We are facing a gang issue in our community, and I've been very honest about that. We're gonna lean into that gap and find out why. We're gonna find out who the leaders are, you know, what their motive is, their mode of operation, and we're gonna hold them accountable as we get them arrested and prosecuted out of our community. Again, we're working in lockstep with the U.S. Attorney's Office to make sure that that is happening with our gang initiative. But when it comes to youth violence, when it comes to the youth in our community, we have to take a multifaceted and a multi-layered approach. I believe strongly in prevention, diversion, and intervention when it comes to our kids. Now, we do understand that there are kids that have committed crimes with guns. They're being charged as adults, so we understand that. But most of these kids, you know, have been failed on so many levels. They've been failed by not having that proper family structure, guidance and leadership at home, and also they're not in school. So, and I tell kids all the time when I go to speaking engagements, you're not going to drop out of school and then drop into a good job. That's not how life works. But what we've done this summer to keep kids busy and occupied, we traditionally would have a 2-week camp at the police academy. This summer we had 4 one-week camps at the police academy. 110 kids came through those academy doors this summer. We had another additional 40 kids in our PAL youth basketball program. That's 150 kids that we coached, we mentored, we talked to about conflict resolution, gang violence, drug addiction, all the things that they deal with on a daily basis, social media, and we challenge the parents as well. We challenge them because these kids are our future. We're depending on them, but we have to give them the tools that they need to be successful. Right now, today, we're 75 homicides compared to 83 this time last year. So we are down on those numbers. I'm not proud of those numbers at all because they represent 75 people that have lost their life in our city. But what's startling about those numbers is almost 60% of those 75 homicides were committed by acquaintances, family, friends, and loved ones. Over almost 60%. So if you took out those situations where people just simply couldn't deal with conflict among people that they know, our numbers would be dramatically down. Again, I commend our robbery homicide division for the work that they're doing. Our solvability rate is actually 77%. 77%. I challenge any law enforcement agency in this country, from Los Angeles, California, which I visited the Los Angeles Police Department, their training academy for a crime fighters conference. I visited the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania Police Department for their assessment center to help them promote some leadership in their department. I challenge any of those major agencies to have a 77% solvability rate. That does not happen. But that is because of the hardworking men and women of JPD, but also the community involvement. The community has drawn a line in the sand and said that we're tired of this foolishness, we're tired of this chaos, and they are helping us. We're soliciting their help, and they are helping us, giving us information, because they hear me and they understand. It could be this family today, it could be my family tomorrow. We've got to hold these individuals accountable for gun violence in our community, for pillaging our community, and the citizens have been wonderful, and they're the reason I'm the chief. The police officers, the work that they do, they're the reason I'm the chief, and the community is the reason that I'm the chief.
We'll be back next weekend with more of the political and current affairs coverage that you demand. I'm Byron Brown from all of us here at 12 News. Make it a great weekend.